Welcome to Chatting GPT, the podcast where I get to speak to the really interesting humans who are implementing AI. I'm Maryrose Lyons, founder of the AI Institute, and today I would like you to meet DC Cahalane. If you don't know DC, the king of Cork, he is a four-time founder. He's a massive ecosystem builder, huge supporter of Cork, of startups in general. He cares passionately around the scene in Ireland, and he's one of the driving forces behind basically the modern startup scene in Ireland. Today, though, he is known as being a venture partner at SureValley Ventures, where he's backing the next generation of Irish technology and AI companies while helping private investors to plug into that wave of innovation. DC, you're very welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. And now that we've got the obligatory multiple mentions of Cork out of the way, we can just skip past that completely.
We can go past it, absolutely, yeah. Listen, I'm so delighted that you're making the time out of your busy schedule to come on to the show. And I know you've loads of things that people want to hear. So the first question I'd ask you really is, what is exciting you the most, or what's keeping you the most curious about the AI space right now?
Oh, it's so, I'll tell you, that I could talk all day, but I'll make it quick. So what the interesting thing is, my day job, I'm a partner at SVV, SureValley Ventures, and actually the firm was started in 2017 by Barry Downs and Brian Cahalane. And when it started in 2017, it started investing in AI companies. So actually, like, our first investment, our first sale in the fund in 2018 was actually a Gen AI company. So actually, in one sense, like, what's really interesting for me is I joined the firm 3 years ago. And it's been the very fact, the basic fact that, like, a lot of, we were very much low-key, investing behind the scenes, investing in, things that were being called machine learning and all this sort of stuff. And actually what's so exciting now is kind of the world having caught up a little bit. And actually now, when I go home and my mother is telling the neighbours that her son invests in AI, they actually know what the bloody hell she's talking about. So I think that's been the big change in my life anyway.
It's all about what your mammy says, absolutely.
Exactly.
But what specific area within the AI space is interesting?
Yeah, like, so I would say, like, for us, we traditionally used to invest in two layers, which was, we used to invest, like, AI engineering, people building tools to allow people to build other AI stuff, and the other one then is where somebody has a really narrow vertical, and they're using AI to, the way I always say it is, like, you have AI native, AI enhanced, and AI enabled companies. The stuff that really excites us is where people are using AI to do, not just to, make something better or make something faster, smarter, but to actually do something that, like, you couldn't do before AI came around. And I think that's what we're seeing at the moment, is we're just seeing a whole bunch of, spoke to an AI accountancy startup last week. And, the first generation of those companies was, okay, here's how AI helps you to run your monthly payroll. But actually, this company that I met last week is like, okay, but actually, you know what? Running a monthly payroll is actually a very outdated concept. We're just going to run a payroll for you in terms of the back end every single day. And then you just, at the end of the month, it'll tell you pay DC or pay Maryrose X. So actually, what I'm really excited for at the moment is seeing things that were very done in a business in a way, because that's all the technology allowed them to do, and now suddenly they're like able to use AI and able to use technology to actually go back and rethink the actual fundamentals of the business. Like,
that is it, exactly, isn't it? It's rethinking everything in a whole new way. It's not just like, I'm always advocating, like, don't just add on AI onto what's already maybe a broken process.
Yeah.
And the more I'm finding with working with clients is that there's an awful lot of companies out there that have processes that kind of have evolved since, like, the year 2000.
Yeah. I actually said to somebody the other day, Maryrose, that it's funny actually, but I think COVID, and I know we don't normally like to talk about all that stuff, but it's actually, it's such a great test for a company, because if over COVID, what actually hurt a lot of businesses was the lack of process and workflows being in place.
Yeah.
They were used to, well, that's something that Mary does, or that's something that John does. And then when John or Mary weren't around, the whole thing fell apart. And I think what's interesting is a lot of the businesses that I mean, nobody's going to say there's a benefit from COVID, but a lot of the ways business changed after COVID was they kind of realized, okay, whether it was because of remote working or because of just anything, they realized like our business needs to become more process driven, more workflow driven. And the companies that actually embrace that are now the companies that are going to get the immediate payback of,
Yes.
well, now because you've mapped your process and made it irrespective of who's in the office on a particular day, bam, now it's really easy to create an AI agent or create an AI flow around that particular task.
Absolutely. So I suppose thinking about COVID and the way the government responded rapidly and I think well to COVID. What are your thoughts? And I know you have some on how the government is responding to AI and how they might do it better.
Yeah, I think look, I come at this from a couple of different perspectives. Obviously, as a kind of a lifelong techie, I'm very close to say what's happening in America in this space. We actually in SVV, our actual larger investment fund is a UK fund, so therefore, like I probably spend just as much time in the UK as I do in Ireland. So for me, I'm kind of comparing and contrasting three different governmental approaches. On top of also being very clued in with kind of the EU stuff and actually being very, very interested in what's going on in China as well.
China, yeah.
And what I will say is, we like beating ourselves up in Ireland. We like if there was a league table in terms of Europe, we're probably middle of the pack. We're probably out of 1 to 10, we're probably a 6 or a 7. Like compared to some countries, it's on the radar now.
Yes.
There's different approaches. Like what I will say is if we look at what we're seeing in the UK, I mean, the UK is very much embracing it at a government level, both elements of it. One, which is them using AI themselves. They have a whole body set up. They have a friend of mine got a call last October. Can you set us up an AI action plan? It was delivered in February, started executing in March, and by the middle of last year, there was 300 billion of infrastructure investment on the cards. So I sit on a body called the Enterprise Digital Advisory that was set up a couple of years ago. And when it was set up, ironically, it was kind of like all these words that you hear around like VR and AR and MX and AI and all this sort of stuff. The Enterprise Digital Advisory Forum was literally set up as a body for civil servants and politicians to be able to come in and say, what the hell is that? Like, what's that? And it's evolved, and actually an element of like that part of that body, I think at the time it was Minister Dara Calleary who was deeply involved in it, in setting it up. Part of that was what led to the formation of Ireland's AI Advisory Council under Patricia Scanlon, because we were able to get the government to understand that there was going to be a lot needed, that the work of the Enterprise Digital Advisory Forum could not encompass what was happening with AI. I think that the way I always think about it is I have a newfound, having had the experience of the last couple of years to work an awful lot more with civil servants. The one thing I will say is I think we have a better class of civil servant in Ireland than most places. But the challenge is the job of a civil servant is that they are the protectors of the purse, and they are protectors of our society, and the way they normally think about stuff is in years and in maybe in election cycles, but not so much. I think that's more the politician thing. So the challenge for them is they're like, what I will say is I've met incredible people, in particular I would say in the Department of Enterprise, who are very keen to see how AI benefits them. But the reality is their idea of moving fast is still 3 months, 6 months. And fundamentally, in the interest of protecting the public purse, I get that. But I do see a speeding up, because I do see that as individual politicians, there's a couple of people standing out now, people like Malcolm Byrne, who's chair of the Oireachtas Committee on AI, as they see that politicians are more comfortable with discussing the issues around AI, I think the civil servants recognize that, their role is to provide, accurate information up the line. So I think the more we can talk about AI, the more we can get our politicians talking about AI, the more we can get the media to talk about AI, the more the civil servants will recognize their role in the execution, and then therefore the faster the response we'll see.
That's really true, and I would actually see that like across the board. So even in the sector that we're really active in, which would be built environment, you've got some of the larger firms now are coming out and being very open about their use of AI. They're sharing use cases and so on, and they're being like role models for the rest of the industry to go. Actually, it's kind of okay to do this.
Yeah.
Whereas 2 or 3 years ago, it was like, shh, you can't say anything, you have to hide it. So
I, I
it's the same across government and non-government
It
space, you know.
is, and I actually saw something funny this morning. I was having my breakfast this morning, and I was on TikTok, right? And what I saw, I came across a kind of a clip, and basically what it was an Irish girl who was starting a clothing business, and the caption was, "I didn't realize when I became a small business owner, I was going to have to become a content creator as well."
Uh-huh.
And I think
Yeah,
we all recognize that,
yeah,
that is part of a small business these days is you're a content creator.
yeah.
And I think what we'll see is, and that's kind of the evolution of social media. And I think what we will see is, AI and the use of AI is going to become a critical skill, in particular for small business. And the way I always say it is, I think we're in that era right now where we're still thinking of AI as a separate thing. And the way I kind of explain it to people is yes, maybe your product will never have AI in it. Maybe you're selling beauty products or tracksuits or something like that. But your business should have AI in it because, I had this conversation with a friend of my mum's actually who she owns a shoe shop in a small town in West Cork. And she was like, sure, it'll never affect me. And I was like, but sure, when the internet came along, didn't you eventually set up a website and that? And as I said, if you gave me access,
No, DC, stop me bugging me. I'm not getting AI in that business.
oh yeah, but as an example, the great example I was to be able to give her was I was saying, well, like if you gave me access to your sales data from last year or from this year,
Yeah,
like wouldn't it help you if I could predict with a reasonable level of accuracy, what you
yeah,
were going to sell next year,
yeah,
when you were going to sell it, was men's going to be more popular than ladies? Were you going to sell loads of kids' shoes in August? You probably don't need AI to tell you that. But it's
yeah,
just like what I would say is, we see it at the moment. Yes, we're investing in companies that are AI first in their product, but actually the really interesting thing about them is because those companies use a lot of AI in their back office accounting and marketing and distribution and logistics, they're seeing nearly probably a 30 odd percent improvement in margin. And that's where you mentioned, say, the local enterprise offices and stuff. That's the advantage that we can give small business in Ireland is by making them like understand, not that like they have to add AI into their product, but even if they're selling, like I don't care if they're selling protein balls or donuts, the AI can save them time and money and effort. If there's a
yeah,
repeatable task that a human being is doing, they can do that. Now, in a big company, you have the whole concern about employment. If you're a two-person company making protein balls in West Cork, and somebody says to you, well, guess what? Using AI, you can have 3 or 4 other people who can help you with your accounting, your marketing, and all that sort of stuff, and it'll cost you way less than a hiring cost. That's
But
interesting.
what you're touching on right there, like this whole idea of the success of a small business is measured by the number of employees it has, and I think that measure needs to fundamentally change because, for example, like my business, we're a small business, we've just started out, and we are doing so much more with the smallest number of people thanks to our use of AI. We've got lots of agents and automation stuff in place.
EI launched their 5-year strategy 2025 to 2030. They'd acknowledge that if it had been, say, 2026 to 2031,
It'd be
they'd
very
have
different.
thing because I think they do recognize that the future, they've I can't remember. I think it's something like over the next 5 years they'll help 2,000 startups or something like that. I think they now recognize that the reality is if their plan was that those 2,000 startups would hire 10 people each and that would get us 20,000 new jobs, I think they now realize like that it's probably more close to 5,000 startups or 6,000 startups to create that same number of jobs. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of talk at the moment about, the reality is the reason that Enterprise Ireland have always measured in terms of jobs is that it was the easiest way of measuring impact for the economy, because for every job there was a kind of an expectation. Let's just say it's a 40,000 or 50,000 euro job. That's an easy way to measure thing. Whereas actually, I think it's going to, like, we're going to have to almost come up with different ways of measuring economic impact, because it ain't going to be number of jobs.
Exactly, because one of the things I was just reading over the weekend was this ebook called The Last Economy by Emad Mustak.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
he's the guy, one of the founders of Stability AI. And he's talking about that very fact, which is that, like, you know, the measures of, like, say, GDP and so
Yeah.
on. It's like GDP, even the maker of GDP, which was Kuznets,
Yeah.
he even said it was a bad measure. And he takes you through in the about how, you know, GDP doesn't take into account that, like, if there's a hurricane and a city is wiped out, that's actually a negative in real life. But in GDP terms, it's a positive because it's all the rebuilding. And he talks about how we need to rethink how we do the measuring of this new era, because the old measures and all the economic measures don't work. It's a whole new paradigm.
One of the things that was very interesting for me this year was the Nobel Prize for Economics didn't go to Donald Trump. I think he'd have been happy to get any Nobel Prize. But the Nobel Prize for Economics went for the concept of creative business destruction, which sounds like a very strange thing. And I would encourage, like, it's very nerdy now, but I encourage everybody to look for it. Because essentially what these three independent economists who were awarded the prize together worked out is that it's not actually about creating lifelong generational businesses anymore. That it's actually about creating, like, successful economies are the ones that allow economies to create small businesses quickly, efficiently, and economically, sell into a particular trend that may last 5-10 years, and then have a good system for extracting the value out of that business into the individual so that they can go again. What I will always say to people is it's been the most eye-opening experience for me, going from the founder looking for money to being the investor looking to distribute money. And one of the challenges, transparently, is a lot of businesses in Ireland don't understand what investors are looking for. They don't understand the difference between, say, taking money from angel investors, taking money from venture capital. They don't understand the business model of venture capital. I think one part of it is that we have, because of, say, the Leos and Enterprise Ireland, we have and actually also very generous, say, research funding ecosystem that we have in universities. What you see in a lot of businesses is you see people falling in love with their solution. They come up with a way of solving something, and then they're just so passionate about that. And what they're actually asking is, like, they're asking the world to turn around them. They're asking the world to pivot to suit the way they want to solve it. And in a lot of cases, it's not that their solution is wrong. It's just that it's the wrong time. It's the wrong market. They've just been unlucky. This scares people sometimes, but the way I always say it these days, today, if you are starting a business today, and if you are 4 or 5 months into it, and you're not talking to customers, you have gone down a very dark and very wrong path. And it always scares the bejesus out of me when you meet startups, and it's like, we're into month 4, month 5, we're polishing our MVP, and you're like, no, show them the dirty, ugly one, and see if they like. Or, like, in software, I always say to it, draw pictures. Like, don't build the software. Show them pictures and say, Mary, if you had this app, and if this is what it looked like, and this is what it did, would you give me money for it?
Last one. What's your biggest buzzword wins at the moment? What word do you hate the most that's been bandied around?
Oh. It's funny, actually. I mean, it's probably agentic. It's probably my,
Yeah.
and that's
I'm
because,
with you. That's mine as
yeah,
well.
I think the problem is the reason it's my most hated is 90% of the time people are not using the word properly. Like,
They're
so,
not agents. Yeah.
yeah, like, so, or, you see a lot of people, and they still think of I think a lot. But what drives me mad at the moment is a lot of misunderstanding about what AI is and isn't, and all this sort of stuff. And I think next year is going to be, sadly, it is going to be the year of agentic. We're going to see it all, because agentic is fundamentally, it's going to be that next evolution of the technology, which is like, okay, so right now, Maryrose and DC, we tell our agents what to do, and they go off and do it. But suddenly now, next year, it's going to be, well, we might tell an agent what we want to achieve, and that agent goes off and talks to other agents, And actually, in terms of booking a podcast appearance, DC's agent talks to Maryrose's agent, and they work out together what's the best time on both our calendars and stuff. So I do think we are heading for a world where that level of like agents talking to agents, maybe unsupervised, is going to get very, very interesting. And I think it's in everybody's interest to kind of start learning the language around this stuff.
I'm just going to end with a shameless plug. If people do want to learn, thanks DC, they can look at weareAIinstitute.com. We've got a wide range of courses and programs that can help everybody, from somebody starting out through to somebody who wants to go really, really deep in a very specific sector. So DC, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. It's been great. If anyone wants to reach you, anyone wants to find you, where's the best place to get you?
Oh, sure, look, my email address is all over the internet at this stage, but it's me@dc.ie, so.
Brilliant. Okay, I will share that. Thank you very much for coming on. You've been great.
Absolute
Thank you.
pleasure.
Bye.